And welcome to a special edition of Africa Business Report. I'm Lerato Mbele. Now we're seeing the African continent rise in terms of GDP growth, and what that's done is create a new middle class. It's also led to more locals taking ownership of their natural resources, and we've seen foreign investments being directed into areas such as energy, retail and banking. In turn, this has spurred on the creation of dollar millionaires who are Africans. Now, when you've got $1 million, how do you make it and how do you ensure that you keep growing it? Our discussion today is all about wealth creation, and we've got just the right panel. We've got dollar millionaires in the room, and we've got experts to help us about strategizing towards wealth creation. First up is Ashok. Sewnarain, thank you so much for your time. He's the Chief Executive and founder of IBV Vaults International. International Vaults, there we go. And what they are high-tech safety deposit boxes, as it were, that you find in South African shopping malls. And he's looking to take the concept now and expand his business into Dubai and the United Kingdom. We're going to hear a little bit more about IBV International Vaults. We've also got Dilip Garich. He is the Chief Executive of Garich & Garich, a trained accountant, but commonly known as a mentor to the wealthy, a finance guru. He's also served in public office at the behest of the finance minister, and so he understands policy as much as he does strategy. And finally, we have Lebu Gunguluza. He made his first million at the age of 27. He's a serial entrepreneur, invested in over 30 companies, but today he wears the hat of executive chairman of the GEM Group, which has interests in media and property. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Let's start with you, Ashok. When you have a little bit of money, how do you make it more and more money?
Easy. To be successful in the world of business and wealth, you got to have, first of all, a big dream. And you must never be afraid to dream. And when you dream big, you must stop for a moment and double your dream. To be successful in business, they say you need 5% capital and 95% guts.
Yeah.
So if you have small money or little money, that's a stepping stone to big money.
Professor Garich, how do you become a millionaire? Is there a template, something you can do?
Well, Lerato, not really. What normally happens is that people like Ashok who dream of something, and what they do, they start a business. And the moment you start a business, it's your own. And the more you work in that business, the more money you would make. So ultimately, if you are successful in what you're doing, you will definitely become a millionaire.
Lebu, you made yours at 27, your first million.
Yes.
How did that happen?
When I was young. In fact, I was born in the shack behind the funeral parlor in the township, and there was not much options. And I think my mother made a great deal around the issue of education, to focus on me being educated, because I've never been a spoiled kid. I never saw toys or whatever. But at the age of 20, because I was so tired of being poor, and you know, I decided to make a commitment to myself to set up a long-term goal. It was an immature goal at that time, but it was a goal that I said to myself, I just need to get out of where I am now. And my first goal was to say I want to be a millionaire by the age of 25, a multi-millionaire by 35, and a billionaire by 45. I wanted to give myself time and space in order to craft whatever I need to craft in between.
Was it important for you to realize those numbers? Some people say, I want to make a success of my life. They don't put a number to it.
Let me tell you why it was important. Because when I was starting my first business, I was making very small business. I was just surviving. And then I said, hang on, but I made a commitment of being a millionaire by 25. So that means something was not right here. So what I did, what was important, was to change the numbers. So as much as I was dealing at that time with small numbers, I said, now let me start being in a space with bigger board numbers. It's more like someone who does gardening. They're happy collecting $300. But then there's someone else who changes the numbers and say, I'm not going to collect $300 a day. I want to do a business where I collect 1 million a day. So the change in numbers, that means also you're thinking is aligned.
Ashok, tell me a little bit about IBV International Vaults. What are they, and how do you grow a business like that?
IBV International Vaults is the first private vault established in South Africa 10 years ago in Durban and in Sandton and soon in Cape Town, and we're also looking at a global expansion. It is primarily to cater for the high net worth individuals, to keep the valuables, important documents, data, heirlooms, watches in a safe storage facility. Primarily it's a bank's job to do that, and the banks have been doing that successfully. However, in the current times, banks have seen this as a non-core business, and 10 years ago, when there was a huge wait list at a bank where I went to my own private, to the bank vault, I realized that there is an opportunity. And as a businessman, we look for opportunities throughout our life.
It's interesting, Ashok started this business, Sandton and Durban. There was a report recently, Lebo, that said Johannesburg, South Africa, has the highest concentration of dollar millionaires on the entire African continent. What is it about the city, Johannesburg, that galvanizes people on that level?
For me, I came from Port Elizabeth. So when I heard about Johannesburg as the city of gold, obviously that's the hype around that it's a city of gold. So as a result, there comes a network now of high net worth people. They happen to then meet here. And you know, life is about relationships. I sometimes say to people that, you know, sometimes it's not, you must not be consumed by the money. You must be consumed more about the relationships that you build with people, because that brings opportunities and sustainability. So most people meet up here, even though their homes are wherever they are. I literally don't stay full time in Johannesburg. I stay in Durban and PE, but I'm always in Johannesburg to do my business.
We've seen many people become dollar millionaires by acquiring equity or controlling stakes in resources companies, in oil and gas, or in mining, for instance, in South Africa. Is that the easiest and direct route?
So perhaps in Africa, that's probably the quickest way to become wealthy. So if you own a mine, most definitely you'll become wealthy very quickly. The idea is to mine the resources. So the whole continent is being looked at upon by the rest of the world as perhaps a pot of gold, if I may say, and hence everybody wants to be in that sphere. So that there is that aspect, but undoubtedly, for example, there's the IT field. There's lots of other fields that have certainly been, has emerged and has now, in South Africa as well as the African continent, has become a global player.
We're also seeing with the rise of the middle class, more and more property investors coming to the fore, and it seems to be many people are becoming wealthy by becoming real estate developers. But what's also interesting with property is an ordinary person, Lerato, can buy an apartment, rent it out, then buy a second apartment, rent it out, and in that way create a little bit of a nest egg.
Of a portfolio of some sort. Property, for example, for most Africans has been very expensive to get into for starters, because you have to have a good track record before even the banks can loan you. And you know, most Africans in the credit bureau, because of the difficulties that they came in. I started in the media space because it was easy to sell media, because you sell advertising, you get paid now, and you produce your goods later. Same as in the event space and all of that. So what I did, I then gathered those funds and I used them to make my first investments into property.
IBV International Vaults, not a bank, but offers a service that a bank used to render. Banking seems to be also a fast-growing sector on the African continent. But if not a bank, then an international vault. Just help me understand, for a prospective investor, why that would be the better option.
I think this is a message to young entrepreneurs in Africa. It's about identifying a need. It's about identifying a niche market, identifying a product that customers and your consumers want. Any product you can make a lot of money out of. Any business, any product. It doesn't have to be specific.
You just have to be creative, a lateral thinker.
You've got to be innovative and creative. But the consumer and the customer, whether the customer is rich or poor, demands and requests three things: quality, service, value. These are the foundation of any successful entrepreneur or business.
Staying with you, Ashok, and very briefly, you've mentioned the entrepreneur. It's a very big theme, entrepreneurship in Africa at the moment, because it's seen as the one way in which young Africans can get themselves out of poverty independently. What does it take to build a business from the ground up and make a real success of it?
First, an idea, a vision, and dream. Then the courage to find helpers, mentors, advisors. In order to be successful in any aspect of life, you got to knock on 100 doors, you got to knock on 1,000 doors. But if you do not have the courage to knock on doors, you will have no window of opportunity, no success.
Right. Lebo, entrepreneurship, how can they grow their small businesses to medium and then to big?
You know, I've always felt that most entrepreneurs focus too much on making the money and hustling. And I have a challenge with hustling because you're not building a business. It's short-term value. The idea is to build long-term value. And the idea is to build systems in your business that will outlive you, even if you're not there anymore, that the business runs itself. So there's 3 areas that you should be focusing on as an entrepreneur. The first one is to ensure that your company provides an excellent product to a client that is needed.
Right.
The second part is to ensure that the systems are in place that guide and put disciplines in place and processes in place to make sure that service is seamlessly offered to the client. And then the last one is to make sure that you've got the best people in your organization to manage those systems going forward so that the company can outlive you.
I've often heard it said, it takes money to make money. The wealthiest in the world are rich families already. The Rothschilds, Aliko Dangote came from a wealthy family, the Oppenheimers. That seems to be a consistent thread. The wealthy stay wealthy.
Well, sadly, that does happen. What happens is that, as they say, money makes more money. So if you actually already have money, you are able to see the opportunities. And the moment you see them, you actually seize them. So they're not entrepreneurs, but they're just wealthy, and they see these opportunities, and they have the money. So they plow the money in there, and they perhaps get a good return from the investment.
No, I just think that, you know, as a child who comes from a rich family, you always have a choice. It's either to mess up or to grow the business. You always have a choice. And I think most rich families have been able to grow their children in the education space, the business space. So they take them in as early as possible in the business life so they can take over. And that's been a great advantage. While when we come from the township, you find that our parents were never in business. So not only have you got a challenge of finance, but you also got a challenge of business skills and all of that. So it becomes challenging.
All right. A quick question to all of you. How important is saving? We're often told that in Africa, people don't save, or they can't afford to save because they've got so many responsibilities.
I could earn $1,000. You could earn $1 million. If I save and you don't save, there's one day I will be richer than you. So saving is fundamental.
Generally, what one would say is that when you get a salary, be it 10,000 rands or be it 100,000 rand, you should be putting away at least 15% of your money into a savings plan. So ultimately, you manage the savings plan and that will grow for you. But what happens nowadays is that we come from a young democracy. We have people that earn a salary, which perhaps 10 or 15 years they were not earning that kind of salary. So what they do, they now focus on consumption kind of things. For example, buy fancy cars, do those kind of things. But they don't save at all. And ultimately, those are the ones that suffer. Right. So saving is so important.
The biggest mistake I did when I made my first million is to blow all my money on the cars and all of that. And I learned the hard way when I went rock bottom again. So that helped me think ahead to say that, look, there's 2 choices. It's either you keep your money in the bank, which you need to compare, obviously, what interest you're going to get, or invest back in the business, which your money grows. So the biggest challenge with us when we get that lump sum of money is that we got so excited that when you say million, you get too excited, and it's all you have in your mind is, where am I going to spend this money? How am I going to spend it? But someone else who receives that money is very mature financially. They will be stressed out of that million because they're thinking, what tools am I going to use to build this money, and over how many years and how much? So the difference between them after 2 years is that this one will have 0 in the bank, and this one will have amassed the same million to 5 million.
Gentlemen, it's been a fascinating conversation, and I feel like we just touched the surface, so perhaps another opportunity to get into the nitty-gritty of exactly those strategies that are needed. But thank you for availing us your time. Ashok Sewnarain, who is the founder and chief executive of IBV International Vaults. We also have Professor Dilip Garage, the chief executive of Garage & Garage, an accountant, but also a mentor to the wealthy. And finally, we have Lebo Gunguluza, the executive chairperson of the GEM group of companies with interests in media and property. But Lebo is also a judge on the acclaimed TV show, the African version of Dragon's Den. So he is our resident dragon who's been with us here. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. You've been watching a special edition of Africa Business Report. The question, how to become a millionaire in Africa and how to grow that million from 1 to 2 to 100. And we heard from two entrepreneurs who said it's all about believing in your dream, investing in your passions, spending a little bit to indulge yourself, but thinking long term. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do join us again next week. From myself, Lerato Mbele, and the team, thank you and goodbye.
Who are we? Well, let's start with who you are. Take this guy. He likes to cook, so we like to do our bit to keep his restaurant running. Oh, and we also had something to do with that payment. We might not give lessons on aerodynamics or complex chemical reactions, but like this man, we do everything we can to empower young minds. And while we don't have an eye for fashion, we know someone who does. She does. And her fabrics are going to Milan, and we're helping her get them there. You see, we don't stop at just banking, because you don't stop at just dreaming.
Standard Bank, moving forward.
What makes your business go? Your answer should maximize your workflow. Your answer should minimize your downtime. Your answer should always make your business performance secure. What makes your business go? The answer is right in your hand. Give your business the edge. Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge Plus.
Today's children are born into a rapidly changing world. Climate change and dwindling resources are a global problem. With over 50 years' experience, the Kuwait Fund is committed to assist its partners in shaping sustainable solutions to the challenges ahead. The Kuwait Fund, helping people help themselves.
Do you think about your mum and dad?
Kötü bir düşünce yoktu.